Financial wellness. Reach out to them for advice at 855 Don Gino. And now back to your hosts, Don Getling and Gino Fronti.
Well, welcome back to your Saturday edition of the Don and Gino Real Estate and Finance Show Unplugged today, because it's just Gino. And we talked about a little bit in the first half how we're going to go rogue today and not have any agenda, not have anything to stick to. And you might recognize that voice there in the background. Mr. Lou Esbin is going to help me kind of destroy the airwaves today. We're probably going to play a little bit of devil's advocate here and go back and forth on where the economy is going in the next few years with the new administration. And we'll talk about the pros and cons of a new administration, and you could give us some of the legal background on that. I know that there's a lot of things that need to change place, and people technically try to focus on this one person that wins the presidency, but there's so much more behind it, right? We're seeing a complete change of all the cabinet members. We're seeing Secretary of State change. We're seeing really everything slotted for the Republicans, both in the House and the Senate, for the next few years. So I think we'll go a little bit into politics. I know Don doesn't like to talk about politics, but since he's not here today, we'll go rogue. What do you think, Lou?
Oh, we can try that.
Yeah? and Lou's going to have to censor himself a little bit. Potentially. He might not.
I don't know.
So if you'd like to join us here in the studio, please go to donandgino.com, hit the live streaming button. We do broadcast live for you here out of the Vault Media Studios. And earlier today, we were with Mary Jane with HomeSmart Real Estate, and we were talking about first-time home buyers and how she's passionate about that and how they're a little bit different, require a different level of education. Yeah, they need to go through the education process, and it's a process rather than an event for them. It's not so intuitive.
Yeah, and my concern about home buyers, and you've heard me talk about this now for years, is they really do not understand fully what they're getting themselves into.
It is a commitment.
Well, it's more than that. They don't understand the documents they're signing.
Agreed.
In most states, you have a lawyer who closes a deal,
right,
and actually sits down and explains to the client what the documents are that they're signing. They get reviewed. You don't have that in California.
In fact, here, let me go ahead and be transparent and take it to one level of even worse, let's call it, right, is that the person that sits down with them to sign their documents is a notary.
Right.
And that notary is instructed by their licensing to say, I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to advise you on this documentation. Please contact your loan officer if you have any questions.
That's right.
And so what happens is people sign their documents and they don't call their loan officer. I could tell you personally, not very many people call me at signing. I'd like to think it's because I've done a good job earlier in the process of educating them through the process so that when they go to sign their final documents, that's just a formality.
Sure.
And of course, I feel good at night that we did a good thing and everything is what we said, but not everybody is going to be so forthright in their documentation.
And I like to think that you have my voice nagging you in the back about all the things we've talked about over the years, what people need to understand about the loan documents they're signing. They don't understand unless they're coming to someone like you, what a promissory note is, what a deed of trust is, what the truth in lending disclosures are, what all of those things are that they're signing. My experience, of course, I get it on the back end when it all falls apart. They say, I have no idea what I was signing.
Now, don't you think there's a little bit of that where they'd like to be naive and don't really want to know?
I don't really think people pay attention to all of those details. I mean, the loan documents collectively are daunting.
Oh, yeah. It's a huge stack. I always remember this old Ditech commercial. This is probably like circa '05. And it was like a 7-inch stack of paper. And they were like, I thought the process was going to get easier. And you got rid of some of the documents. And the guy takes off one sheet off the top. And he goes, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel like it's actually not getting better. It's actually getting worse as far as the documentation.
It is getting worse.
Yeah.
It is getting worse.
But actually, this brings us to something you may not know. I'm going to open up this can of worms. I'm going to start sharing that Fannie Mae has made some significant changes that are taking place in January. One of which, it is going to make documentation a lot simpler. If you work for a company that reports your income to Equifax, and yes, don't kid yourself, some companies do report your income to Equifax, or coming down the road, ADP will come on board with this as well, and other big payroll companies, Bartlett Services and things like that. If your income is reported to one of these large national payroll companies or large national income verifiers, Fannie Mae will have the automated opportunity to validate your income with no loan officer involvement and without you producing W-2s and pay stubs. Okay? So unless you're a subject to cybercrime, which this is what's going to open the door for cyber criminals, but it eliminates the ability of a loan officer to be able to produce fraud on your behalf. So it's actually a good thing for the industry in theory.
Yeah, but that begs the question that what percentage, let's take California.
Mm-hmm.
What percentage of business in California is small business?
You tell me.
What do you think?
I would like to say a big number, but I'm probably going to be shocked, and it's probably not. I'd like to say at least 30%. Well, what do you call a small business? Let's talk about that for a
50
second.
or fewer employers.
50 or
fewer
fewer
employees.
Actually, probably more. Let's call it 50%.
98%.
Whoa! 98%?
98%.
So we have no mega employers here?
You do, but the vast majority of this state's economy, which is the sixth largest economy in the world,
Yeah.
runs on small business.
That is shocking.
Yeah, and the problem is that the state legislature, as it is currently constituted, both politically, philosophically, ideologically, does not consider small business to be on par with the individual. And when you, because I represent small business.
Sure, I know you do. By the way, let's talk about that, right? This is Lou Esbin with Esbin Law. He's actually our go-to whenever any questions arise as to, anything pretty much that seems not right, I would say, right? Hey, Lou, does this sound right to you? You're our go-to for that, for sure.
Yeah, it's, I'm one of 150 certified bankruptcy specialists in the state.
But see, that doesn't do you justice, because that's how we met you, is thinking that you were a bankruptcy attorney, but that's not really what you are.
Well, it's a very broad term, because what I have experience in doing is for the last 32 years, I have deconstructed businesses, put them back together again, taken them apart. And that's what people don't understand is in doing what I do, I know how to create a corporation, create a business, counsel a client on how to run a business. I have a business degree from the State University of New York at Albany, finance and accounting. I actually know how to read a spreadsheet and create a spreadsheet. You know that.
Yep.
And what bankruptcy has allowed me to do is basically look at how people make mistakes and then counsel my clients on how not to fail.
Right. And I love that about it. So if you're looking not to fail, if you're looking to open a business, I can't think of a better few hours that you should spend than spend a little time with Lou and say, what shouldn't I do?
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyways, we digressed a little bit, but we were talking about the state, we were talking about small business, and we were talking about Fannie Mae implementing automated income verification.
So that assumes, because the bureaucrats all assume that most of us are paid slave laborers. And when I refer to a paid slave laborer, I mean someone who's employed.
Right.
Right. So if you're not a paid slave laborer, you don't fall within the bureaucratic confines of that program that you just described.
Right.
And that just throws them off, because now all of a sudden you have a self-employed person, you're dealing with 6 months of bank statements, dealing with the P&L, you're talking to their CPA, you're looking at their taxes, and that borrower, that prospective borrower, does not fall within the very neat confines of an algorithm.
Right. And so what we're going to do is, for those borrowers, we still have a manual process. But for some, this will make it easier. And now, this is interesting, because if I go politically, I would say that this is something that the last administration was instrumental in making happen, is making it easier for W-2 employees to purchase homes and making it more difficult for self-employed borrowers to purchase homes. I mean, this is an absolute certainty that we can talk about. Guaranteed, over the last decade, it has become more difficult for business owners and easier for employees to purchase homes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's something that's definitely, I don't think that's going to change with this administration, and I'll tell you why. Because it drives tax revenue.
Well, and just because you have a change of leadership, it doesn't mean you have a change in the bureaucracy. One of my favorite movies is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Right.
Right? What happens when there is a galactic blunder by a bureaucratic agency, the earth gets destroyed. Well,
All right. Well, we'll be right back with Lou Esbin, and we'll talk a little bit more. I want to get into a little bit more of what this Fannie Mae situation is, and we might just talk a little more politics, I guess.
okay.